Hey guys, what's up? It's Ripe again. In today's video, mother-in-law called the police on me after I kicked her out of my house and then she tried to take away my son. Here is what happened. Subscribe to Ripe on YouTube and hit the bell to turn on notifications. This story is about my mother-in-law and her relationship with me and her son. From the moment she saw me, she hated me. She tried everything to convince my husband not to marry me. Her plan was not successful though. We got married and we have a son together. She has been annoying me since I can remember. The first time she ever saw me, she told me that I am fat even though I am not. She always tried putting me down, talking bad about me and my body and always telling me how bad I look. To be honest, I never really cared. I love my husband and he loves me, so we just laugh it off. The real problems begin when I give birth to our child. She started telling me that I'm not a good mother and that I don't know how to raise my child. One time, a month after the birth, she called my husband and said, "Darling, keep an eye on the baby, because I'm sure that stupid woman doesn't know how to take care for a child. Do you want me to come over?" They fought there and my husband told me that he does not want to take her crap anymore and that she should stop. They fought for 10 minutes on the phone and the conversation ended with my husband saying, "Don't talk to us again." We did not talk to her for 5 months before she started calling again, apologizing and sending gifts to the house. "I'm sorry that I upset you, darling." "Mom, why don't you want to understand? She is my wife, the mother of my child. You cannot act like that. She never said or did anything to you." "She stole you from me. When you were a little boy about 4 years old, you promised me that you will never leave me for another woman," said his mother and started crying. "That's crazy. I was 4, Mom. 4, he replied shouting. "You were 4 and you were so smart. Since you met her, you started being dumb and disrespectful. There is nothing she has that I cannot give you." "Well, there is plenty," I replied. She started crying suddenly and laid on the couch pretending she needed water. I went to grab water, but I listened to the conversation a little more. "Dear, you can leave her. Let her take the kid with her. You move in back with me and we'll be happy again," she said. I heard my husband shouting again, so I went and brought the water. She drank the water and didn't say anything for almost half an hour. "I regret everything I said." She finally broke the silence. I did not say anything, all I wanted to do was kick her out of the house. I looked at her, she was fake crying, looking at my husband with puppy eyes. "You can make it up by staying with the child tomorrow. We have some work to do in the garden," he said. "I would love to. I'm so happy," she replied. I was not happy with this idea, but I wanted to let my husband be happy and keep his relationship with his mother. The next day, she came to our house at 9 AM and took a seat next to the kids on the couch. "We are in the garden. Shout if you need anything," said my husband. "We won't need anything. I know how to take care of a child," she replied. We went outside and started our work. We heard the kid laughing a few times, so we assumed that everything was fine. We finished in the garden around the afternoon and we went inside to eat something. As we entered the room, we saw that it was full of smoke. She was smoking and drinking next to our child. "What the hell are you doing?" asked my husband. "Nothing, I'm just smoking a cigarette watching TV," she replied. He grabbed the wine bottle from her hand and smashed it on the floor. "You cannot come in here and act like you own everything. You cannot drink and smoke in front of our child," he shouted. "Get out!" She did not reply, she just walked out of the door with the cigarette still in her hand. I took the child, changed his clothes because it was stinking of smoke, and put him to sleep. As we were talking about what happened, someone knocked on the door, which was the police. "Good evening, sir. This lady called us and she said that your wife attacked her." My husband explained the whole situation and the police officer then left. I spent the night trying to calm my husband and tried to think about how we could handle the situation. It did not take much until she started calling him again, apologizing and begging him to forgive her, and then he did. "Can I come over tomorrow?" she asked. "I'm not home tomorrow, but you could come," he replied and looked at me. I wanted to grab the phone from his hand and scream at his mother, but I just nodded. I wanted to make her realize I was not a bad wife and mother. She then came in the morning, so I prepared her coffee and some biscuits. I don't really like coffee. "Did you do it or was it bought?" she asked, so I decided to lie. "It's bought, I don't know how to make coffee." "You know, when I first saw you, I knew you were not good for him. You're not pretty, you're fat, and you don't even know how to make coffee," she said, smiling. "Also, should have known you didn't do this coffee. You could never," she added while taking another sip. "Thank you for all the compliments. Also, I made the coffee. I was just testing to see how big of a hypocrite you are." I get off my chair and walk slowly to the front door. I open it and I look at my mother-in-law. "Get out," I said. Before she left the house, she made sure to throw all the coffee she had left on the carpet and then she left. I called my husband and told him everything. "I don't want to have her in this house anymore. I don't want her near my kid," I said. "I'll talk to her and we will give her one last chance. The last one." He called her and explained what she did wrong. He told her that she cannot drink and smoke in our house and that she cannot disrespect me and put our kid in danger. "Look, I know how you are stressed, dear. Go out for dinner. I can stay with the kid tomorrow night. Go out for an hour," she said. "That's a very good idea, Mom. Thanks." I hated the plan, but I wanted to go out and I knew that we will fight with her and that it will be the last. She laughed at my dress, but I didn't listen to her and we went to the restaurant closest to our home. "I think we better go home," I said after only half an hour, "but we only drank a glass of wine," my husband said. "I don't trust your mother," I replied. We got in the car and drove home. When we parked, we saw her and the child both in her car. I jumped out of the car and ran to her. "Give me my child," I shouted. She rolled her window a little and smiled. "You are not worthy of it. You cannot take care of your own child. If you want this kid to be safe, divorce my son." "What? Why?" I asked, almost crying. "We would take care of him, me and him, and I promise you, that child will never be in danger." My husband called the police and then started fighting with his mother, who still would not open the car door. When the police finally came, she started the car and left, but the police chased her. I was standing in front of my house listening to the police sirens, hoping that my son would be fine. A few minutes later, the police came back with the child. "We arrested the lady," said the police officer who gave me the kid. That was the last time we spoke to her, never heard another word, never saw her again. It's been years since the incident, but to be honest, I still don't ever want to see her again. And yeah guys, that is certainly a just no mother-in-law from hell. If you ever had any issues with your own in-laws, then please feel free to share your stories in the comments. Thank you so much. And the next one is titled Revenge on the Exterminator. Here is how we did it. Neighbor had an exterminator come out at some point today for some manner of vermin eradication. We did not know about the exterminator until husband and I tried to run out quickly to grab lunch. We both WFH. We are talking and mid-sentence I stopped dead in my tracks and pointed at the truck in the driveway. One thing to note is there is some minor resurfacing happening in our neighborhood, nothing major and nothing that would make someone think there is no place to park. Open street parking available, literally 15 feet from our drive. So I look at hubby and he looks at me and we both slowly walk around the truck. Not only was the guy not doing any services for us, he was parked diagonally in our driveway, so even if we had wanted to park in the driveway, we couldn't. We stood out there for a good 10 minutes calling the numbers on the truck and getting nowhere. Out of the neighbor's yard emerges the exterminator, bellowing, "Hey, y'all need me to move?" Well, as a matter of fact, yes. Followed then by, "Y'all live here?" "No sir, we just like to randomly walk around and stand behind trucks and driveways." We were polite about it until the guy started spinning tails. Neighbor said he could park there in our driveway, not his, and neighbor never said anything about the house, which is our house, not the one being sprayed. Why do we have a problem with the truck parked there? Do I need to keep repeating it? Okay, once more for those in the back, because it is our house. So while hubby is talking to this guy off a bug spray laden tangent, I walked over to talk to the neighbor. The neighbor is cool and was confused as to why I was asking about our driveway and his exterminator. Cleared it up quickly and went on my merry way to find Exterminator Man, still hollering reasons he was coming up with as to why he was parked in our driveway. I don't care, move along sir, please wear a respirator. What I finally got out of the guy was he didn't want to park on the street and walk those extra 15 feet. Well, if I cannot park here, where am I supposed to park? Shake my head. To be fair, maybe it wasn't 15 feet, it was more like 12. He also never gave a reason as to why ringing the doorbell did not occur to him. That was at noon, and I really either wanted a drink or to have some of the insecticide. And the next one is titled, Neighbor Being a Douchebag, Here is How I Got My Revenge. This is kind of a complicated situation, so stay with me on this one. It also turned out to be pretty long, so sorry in advance. My backyard borders 3 neighbors, one to the left, one to the right and one to the back. The neighbor to the back has another neighbor on the other side from my backyard of his backyard. All our backyards are fenced off by rather low concrete fencing that looks like crap and some hedges here and there. All these neighbors are lovely people, so we rather easily came to an agreement to have the fence redone with some nice wooden panels. We hired a single company to do everything, as that helped us in getting a good price. I did the coordination since my backyard was the most central one and they needed to use that to access all the fences. One of the neighbors knew a guy that could remove the hedges for less money than the company we hired, so we cancelled the hedge removing part from the order we placed. My yard did not have any hedges, so I did not even care how they would do it. However, when that guy tried to remove the hedges, he got stuck on one of them because it had some concrete poles embedded in it which he couldn't remove. The neighbor whose hedge it was called the company we hired to ask them to remove the hedge anyway. No problem there, everything was settled. Last week the company we hired dropped off 2 big garbage containers. One for the old concrete fence and one for the hedge. They placed the one for the concrete fence next to the road on my property and the other container on the opposite side of the road on the property of an old guy that had his house a bit further down the road from me. The property itself was just a grass field with some trees. I will refer to that old guy as RD from now on because I have learned yesterday that he acts like a rabid dog. RD had nothing to do with the refencing works other than that there was a container on a patch of grass he owned but did not do anything with. The work started on Tuesday and everything went great until my wife found a typed letter in our mailbox from RD. It was a pretty rude letter in which he demanded that the container on his property would be removed as soon as possible. That already agitated me because I'd been home all Tuesday and he could have just come over and asked me about it like a normal person. Nevertheless, I went to the guys that were working on the fence and told them about the letter. They assured me that it shouldn't be an issue because the first 3 meters next to the road is owned by the city and companies can use it to put temporary stuff they need to complete their work there. Nevertheless, they would remove the container as soon as they could. Since the container was not even for me because I had no hedges and it was ordered separately by one of the other neighbors, I thought screw it, I did my part and just tossed the letter away. Yesterday, right after the guys from the fencing company left for the day, we were alarmed by loud banging on our back door. I went to look and saw RD standing there. He was already yelling, cussing and spitting before I even opened the door. He ushered me to come with him to take a look at what I had done to his property. We walked to the street and crossed it, all the while he was calling me disrespectful for not answering his letter and all sorts of other furious rambling, of which I could only understand half of what he said. It turned out the workers left a small pile of pebbles on his property, probably from one of the neighbors' yards. Then he did something that made me lose what little patience I had left. He poked his finger at my chest and said, "You are going to fix this." I started yelling back at him and got so angry I don't even remember all the things I said. I told him he was being a douchebag for writing such a stupid letter when all he had to do was sort this out, was to come and talk to me like a normal person. I told him the container on his property is for one of the neighbors and not me. My container was on my property. I told him that the company had every right to put it there and that he couldn't do jack crap about it. I told him that I don't control what the employees of the fencing company do, so if they leave pebbles on his property, he should call the company and not come yell at me. And then I finally told him I never invited him to come to my back door and that if he ever stepped foot on my property again, I would call the cops for trespassing. Then I turned around and left him spitting his anger even further and did not see him again though. This morning the guys from the fencing company arrived to complete the last parts of the fence and I saw how they first started to rake and shovel the pebbles across the street. I headed out and asked them if that old geezer from down the street called them and they confirmed. RD apparently started ranting on the phone and threatened to file a complaint with the police for the pebbles. The guys also said that the pile of pebbles just fell down the side of their truck when they were scooping them in, and they did not even notice it happened, because their truck was blocking the view. All RD had to do was ask them to remove it, and they would have done so without the issue. Instead, he decided to be a total dick about the whole situation. On the bright side, the new fencing looks great. Edit, just wanted to add a few facts so you should know before flaming me. I did not know the company was going to bring 2 containers. As the neighbor with the hatch arranged the second one, I was in no way involved in that arrangement. Also, I did not tell the company where they could put their containers. I just arrived home from work one day and the containers were there. I did not know who owned the lot on the opposite side of the street before getting the angry letter from the neighbor. It is just an empty lot with some grass and trees, and I always thought it was owned by the city, as there has not been any activity on it in the past 9 years I have lived there. After receiving the letter, I told the company that the neighbor wanted the container moved. They said no, we are not going to do that, as we are legally allowed to put it there. And the next one is titled, I think my neighbor belongs here. So my SO and I moved into a house where it and the neighbors were both up for sale, not realizing that they both hated each other, and this was a factor in both being up. When I moved in, the neighbor, I will call her Karen, next door was friendly, even offered to help us clean our house, which we politely declined. We put up cameras immediately as there was some crime in the area, and we had them before as our places had been broken into previous to moving into this property. Karen did not like that. It caught her dog as she let it out daily to defecate on our lawn twice a day. She would let it out to go, and she would then go back inside her house and call her dog in a few minutes later. I initially picked up the dog waste but quickly got annoyed. Their dog would also pee on the lawn and create giant burn patches, which caused other neighbors to complain, including Karen. So I went to talk to them. I was polite, but they thought it was crazy. Anyone would have an issue with this, and as an excuse offered that they had never seen it happen. Yeah, because you purposely go back inside to not see your dog pooping. It just kept happening. So one day I returned their property. They were not happy, but after this they watched their dog and picked up after it if it went on my property, but left it otherwise. My grass also grew back after I reseeded and didn't have any further burn marks. Turned out it was Karen's dog doing that too. They often leave the dog off leash and it causes all kinds of other trouble, but mainly with others. It chases cyclists and nearly causes crashes with them and vehicles when it runs in traffic. It often lunges at other people's dogs and sometimes creates problems as they try and control their dog while this one chases them. It will bark all day at nothing and everything. They can even be right beside it on the deck and they are perfectly happy listening to it bark. Fine, except then their daughter and her friends started throwing rocks at our house and windows. Big rocks. Caught on camera, I went over again. Spoke to Dad, call him David. He said he would take care of it, and shortly after their daughter came by and apologized with a smirk on her face. Then, out of an abundance of pettiness, they moved in more family and had them always parking their cars in front of our house, leaving the spot in front of theirs open, always. This displaced our guests, but we did nothing. What could we do? Their actions were rude but legal. This continued for a month until my SO suggested that maybe I was cynical and that it wasn't being done on purpose to be disrespectful. She then put a note saying something to the effect of, if you could park when possible in front of your own address instead of ours, it would be greatly appreciated as it displaces our guests. This went over about as well as you can imagine. Karen immediately upon hearing about the note parked her normally garage-kept car half in front of her driveway and half in front of our grass to ensure our guests were still displaced, but to make a point and also just to show extreme childish levels of maturity. When my SO left the house to check the mail, Karen, who had now had her car parked for hours with her and her daughter taking turns to watch for either of us, made a beeline for my SO and aggressively and vaguely threatened her by saying we would be neighbors for a long time and asking her repeatedly with chest puffed out, so this is how it's gonna be? She also made sure we knew that she had called the city and told her that we didn't own the street. And yep, no kidding Karen, not at all what the note said. The next day our guests parked in front of our house. Karen went to their car and started to film them up close and became aggressive. These people were confused as to why someone was being so confrontational. If Karen and her kin cannot park there, nobody can. We later got a call about this and confirmed it on our house cameras. The police were called and attended. Karen pretended she wasn't home. The police left and, seeing her chance, so did Karen. The police returned later, spoke to someone at the house and left a message for Karen to call them. Today, Karen approached my SO and me with a note to tell us that she didn't want our guests throwing their vegan food in her garbage anymore. That is great, except this never happened. After checking the cameras, I let Karen know. She became angry and started taking pictures of the property, us and who knows what else. Now there's only to wait and see what tomorrow brings us. And guys, if you have watched until here and if you have ever had any awful neighbors like the ones in our stories, please don't forget to post some star emojis in the comments if you want to support my channel. Thank you so much in advance. And in addition, please don't forget, if you have any interesting stories to share of your own, then head on over to r/ripe stories on Reddit to share your own story there. And the next one is not a neighbor story, but instead it is a little bonus story from r/ripe stories. And just to give you a little warning in advance, this story might be offensive to some of you. It is titled My Uncle's Military Story. And sorry guys, by the way, I forgot to mention, the first story in today's video was posted by user Stacy Rose as me on our own subreddit, and this story is posted by user Heart of Dreams, also from our own subreddit. Anyway, hey Ripe, I have a couple secondhand stories about my family that I feel you and your followers might approve of, as I tend to ramble. Apologies in advance. I have many aunts and uncles, about 5 on each side, but the one I want to talk about today is my now deceased Uncle Brian. He passed away to cancer when I was very young, so I mostly only know him by my mother's rambling. My uncle grew up to a poor family in the greater Las Vegas area. Grandparents were ex-military and his brothers loved to play pranks. However, of all of them, Uncle Brian was, as mom put it, a mean little man. If 5 guys jumped him with knives, they better pray they keep their grip, because they are going to need them. My somewhat naive grandma believed his excuses when he came home bloody, but not grandpa. How far these fights went is not clear, but what was clear was that he came home looking rough a lot. Fed up grandpa finally told Uncle Brian it was military or jail. He chose military. He was then part of the deployment to Desert Storm. And the following is why I have always believed my uncle was a good man and regularly liked to joke that he became my guardian angel. A journalist contacted grandma one day during his duty, claiming to have a story they were planning to run, I think it was Times magazine, about my uncle. We never did find the article, so by now it is only hearsay, but I like the version I am now about to tell. For those with weak stomachs, this is your trigger warning. My uncle was part of the foot soldiers who had to enter and clear villages. They often found them empty or full of the dead. In one village, however, they found something worse. In a basement tied to a post were 2 young children. Both were miraculously alive. No one in the unit could speak their language, and the unit, now several days in, were on the low side of their supplies. My uncle, from what I gather against us army Rex, became these children's caretaker, and his fellow soldiers split their dwindling supplies to feed these 2 lost children for several days, until they were able to drop them off at the Red Cross station. The reporter who called grandma apparently got the story from said Red Cross station. My uncle to this day remains my hero for this. Why was the story never in the magazine? We can think of several reasons, but I wish I had it, if only for proof.